Have you ever found yourself weeks or even months into getting to know someone, only to realize you've been pouring your energy, your attention, your precious time into a connection that was never going to work out? You look back and see all the signs were there, the inconsistencies, the mismatch in values, the nagging feeling that something just wasn't right, but you brushed them aside, hoping things would change, or maybe just not wanting to be alone. It's a draining, all too common experience in modern dating, where endless options and surface-level interactions can make it harder than ever to recognize who truly deserves a place in your life. This isn't just about romance, it's about self-respect, clarity, and the conscious choice to stop settling for what distracts you instead of what fulfills you. That's where an ancient philosophy, one that has guided leaders, thinkers, and everyday people for centuries, offers a surprisingly modern solution: Stoicism. Far from being some abstract or rigid set of rules, Stoicism is a practical framework for living with intention, especially when it comes to relationships. It teaches us how to focus on what we can control: our judgments, our actions, our standards, while letting go of what we can't, like how others behave or whether they meet our expectations. When you apply this mindset to dating, everything changes. You stop chasing validation or chemistry alone and start looking for character, alignment, and mutual respect. You move from reactive emotion to thoughtful discernment, and that's exactly what we're diving into today: how to use Stoic principles to build a personal filter system so clear and effective that you'll never again waste your time on the wrong person. In this video, we'll walk through 25 Stoic filters, practical, actionable questions and principles drawn directly from Stoic wisdom that you can apply from the very first interaction. These filters will help you quickly identify compatibility, character, and long-term potential, saving you not just time, but emotional energy and unnecessary heartache. This isn't about being overly critical or closing yourself off. It's about being wisely selective, so when the right person does come along, you have the clarity and confidence to recognize them. If you're ready to transform how you approach relationships, to move from frustration to freedom, from doubt to decisive action, you're in the right place. Let's begin. The first and arguably most fundamental filter in the Stoic framework is what we can call the virtue alignment test. Remember, for the Stoics, virtue wasn't just a nice idea, it was the entire point of a good life. It was the only true good. Everything else, wealth, status, even relationships, were considered preferred or dispreferred indifference. They had value, but only if they were pursued with virtue. So, when evaluating someone's potential role in your life, this is the ultimate litmus test. Does this person embody the four cardinal virtues: wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance? This isn't about looking for perfection, but rather for a consistent orientation toward these qualities. Let's break down what each virtue looks like in practice, starting with wisdom. This is practical wisdom, or phronsis, the ability to navigate complex situations with good judgment. You're not looking for a philosopher, you're observing how she makes decisions. Does she learn from her mistakes, or does she repeat the same patterns while blaming others? When faced with a problem, does she seek understanding and practical solutions, or does she resort to drama and emotional reactivity? A woman with wisdom understands that her perspective is limited and remains open to new information, which is a cornerstone of any healthy, growing relationship. Next is courage, which extends far beyond physical bravery. Stoic courage is the moral strength to do what is right, even when it's difficult or frightening. It's the courage to be vulnerable, to speak her truth with kindness, to set boundaries, and to stand up for her values. You might notice this in how she handles conflict. Does she avoid difficult conversations, or does she lean into them with respect for both herself and you? Courage is also the fortitude to persevere through life's inevitable hardships without becoming bitter or defeated. It's a quiet resilience that tells you she won't crumble at the first sign of trouble. and that she'll be a true partner when challenges arise. Then we have justice, which the Stoics defined as our duty to our fellow human beings. This is about fairness, kindness, and how she treats people. All people, not just you on a good date. Observe how she interacts with servers, customer support agents, or colleagues. Does she show basic respect and empathy, or does she see others as instruments for her own goals? Justice is also about reciprocity. Does she genuinely care about fairness in the relationship, ensuring it's a balanced exchange of energy, effort, and care? A just person operates with a fundamental understanding that we are all connected and treats others accordingly. Finally, temperance or self-discipline. This is the virtue of moderation and self-control. It's about managing impulses and desires rather than being enslaved by them. You can see this in her relationship with social media, with spending, with her emotions, even with her diet. Does she exercise restraint, or is she frequently governed by immediate gratification? A woman with temperance isn't rigid or joyless. She simply has a mastered inner world. She can enjoy life's pleasures without being controlled by them, which means she's far less likely to be swept into drama or make impulsive decisions that could destabilize a partnership. Applying this filter isn't about conducting a stern interview on the first date. It's about mindful observation over time. You listen to the stories she tells about her life, her work, and her past relationships. You notice how she responds to small inconveniences and major setbacks. You pay attention to whether her actions consistently align with her stated values. When you make virtue your primary filter, you immediately shift your focus from superficial attraction to foundational character. You stop asking, "Do I like how she makes me feel?" and start asking the far more powerful Stoic question, "Is she a good person?" The answer to that will tell you everything you need to know about whether she's worth your time. Now, let's move to a filter that follows naturally from the discussion of virtue, because it's where those virtues are truly put to the test in daily life: the emotional self-regulation check. While the Stoics are often misunderstood as being unfeeling or suppressing emotions, their philosophy is actually about achieving a profound level of emotional maturity. They didn't advocate for a life without feeling. They sought a life where feelings don't hijack your judgment or actions. For a Stoic, a turbulent emotional state is a sign that your reasoning is out of alignment with nature, and it's something to be mastered, not indulged or unleashed on others. This makes a person's capacity for emotional self-regulation one of the most telling indicators of their character and their potential as a partner. To apply this filter, you need to become an observer of reactions. Everyone is on their best behavior when things are going smoothly. The true test of character happens when plans fall apart, when traffic is a nightmare, when a reservation is lost, or when she receives some difficult news. These moments are like windows into her inner world. Does a minor inconvenience, like a long line at the coffee shop, trigger a wave of visible irritation and complaining? Or does she accept the situation with a sense of equanimity, perhaps even using the unexpected wait as a chance for a quiet moment or a conversation? This isn't about being a pushover. It's about the wisdom to discern between what she can change and what she must accept gracefully. Pay close attention to how she discusses setbacks, both past and present. When she talks about a project that failed or a professional disappointment, does she focus on what she learned and how she grew, or does she primarily blame external factors? A bad boss, unfair circumstances, jealous colleagues. A Stoic-minded individual takes ownership of her reactions and her efforts, even when the outcome was beyond her control. She understands that while she can't always control what happens to her, she always retains sovereignty over her response. A pattern of deflecting blame and refusing accountability is a major red flag, as it shows an unwillingness to engage in the kind of reflective practice that emotional maturity requires. This also extends to how she handles disagreement or criticism directed at her. Can she listen to a perspective that challenges her own without becoming defensive or personally offended? Does she have the capacity to sit with the discomfort of not being right, to consider another viewpoint, and to engage in a discussion rather than an argument? A woman with strong emotional regulation sees a conflicting opinion not as a threat to her identity, but as an opportunity to expand her understanding. She can separate her ideas from her self-worth, which is the foundation of truly productive and respectful communication. Of course, this filter is not about expecting robotic perfection. We all have bad days, and moments of frustration are human. The key distinction is in the duration, intensity, and recovery. Does a moment of anger spiral into an hours-long sulk or a cutting remark designed to wound? Or does she feel the emotion, process it, and fairly quickly return to a baseline of calm? This ability to metabolize difficult feelings without letting them dictate her behavior is a superpower in relationships. It means that when the two of you eventually face a conflict, as all couples do, it will be navigated through dialogue rather than drama, through repair rather than resentment. Observing this trait early on can save you from a future filled with exhausting emotional whiplash and walking on eggshells. This next filter gets to the very heart of the Stoic operating system and is perhaps one of the most revealing lenses through which to view a potential partner, the Locus of Control Assessment. The core Stoic principle, famously articulated by Epictetus, is that some things are within our power: our opinions, our pursuits, our desires, our aversions, while everything else is not. A wise and virtuous person spends her energy exclusively on the former and meets the latter with acceptance, not resistance. When you're getting to know someone, observing where she places the locus of control for her life's events, internally with herself or externally with others and circumstances, tells you an enormous amount about her maturity and her suitability for a healthy relationship. You can begin applying this assessment in casual conversation by simply listening to the language she uses to describe her world. A person with an internal locus of control uses phrases that reflect agency and ownership. She might say, "I wasn't happy with how that project turned out, so I've been developing a new system to stay more organized." Or, "That relationship taught me I need to communicate my needs more clearly from the start." Her focus is on her response, her learning, and her actions. In contrast, someone with a strong external locus of control speaks a language of blame and victimhood. Her stories are populated by villains and unfortunate events. "My boss never recognizes my hard work," "My ex was completely crazy," or "I'd be in better shape if my gym wasn't so crowded." She is the constant protagonist in a story where everything happens to her, and she has little power to change the narrative. This isn't to say that external factors don't exist or that they can't create genuine hardship. Of course they can. The critical distinction lies in the focus. The Stoic-minded individual fully acknowledges the difficult circumstance, a job loss, a personal betrayal, a financial setback, but then immediately turns her attention to the one sphere she can influence, her next move. She asks, "Given this reality, what can I do?" The person stuck in an external locus gets trapped in the grievance itself, circling the drain of, "Why did this happen to me?" And it's not fair. One posture is energizing and forward-moving, the other is draining and keeps her perpetually stuck. In a partner, the former is a teammate who will help you navigate any storm. The latter becomes an emotional project who will pull you into every one of her storms. Consider how this manifests in everyday situations. If she's consistently late, does she own it with a sincere apology, or does she have a ready-made excuse for every occasion? The traffic was terrible, her previous meeting ran over, her phone died. If she's feeling unfulfilled in her career, is she taking online courses, networking, or updating her resume? Or is she complaining about the economy and how no one is giving her a chance? These patterns reveal a fundamental worldview. A relationship with someone who believes life happens to her is exhausting. you will eventually be cast in the role of the savior, expected to fix her problems, or you'll become the next target of her blame when she's unhappy. A relationship with someone who takes ownership is a partnership of two capable adults building a life together, both understanding that while they can't control the wind, they can always adjust their sails. Building on the idea of personal agency, our next filter shifts the focus outward to examine the very architecture of her worldview. This is the value congruence evaluation, and it's absolutely critical because you can admire someone's character and still be fundamentally mismatched in what you believe makes life worth living. The Stoics had a very specific hierarchy of value. They placed virtue above all else and saw external things like wealth, social status, and pleasure as potentially useful but ultimately indifferent to a life well lived. They weren't ascetics who rejected these things outright. They simply refused to let their happiness depend on them. A partner who doesn't share this fundamental orientation is, in the long run, incompatible with a Stoic lifestyle, no matter how strong the initial chemistry might be. To apply this filter, you need to move beyond small talk and engage in conversations that reveal her core priorities. You're not looking for her to recite Stoic doctrine. You're listening for the underlying values her choices and opinions reflect. A powerful way to do this is to discuss how she spends two of her most precious resources, her time and her money. These are the clearest indicators of what someone truly values, far more telling than their stated beliefs. Does she invest her free hours in activities that cultivate her mind and character, reading, learning a skill, spending quality time with loved ones, engaging in physical activity? Or is her leisure primarily dedicated to passive consumption, endlessly scrolling social media, binge-watching television, or chasing the next novelty or thrill? There's nothing inherently wrong with relaxation, but a pattern of consumption over creation often points to a life seeking external distraction rather than internal fulfillment. Her relationship with money and material possessions is another exceptionally revealing area. The Stoic ideal is one of simplicity and utility, not deprivation. They believed in using wealth wisely as a tool for good, but warned against becoming enslaved to the pursuit of more. Listen to how she talks about these things. Does she derive a sense of self-worth from the brand of her handbag or the model of her car? Does she speak with envy about others' acquisitions or seem to be in a constant state of wanting the next thing? Conversely, does she appreciate quality and beauty without making it a central part of her identity? A woman whose values align with Stoicism finds security in her own character and resourcefulness, not in her bank account. She might enjoy nice things, but she knows they are just things, and she would be just as herself without them. This evaluation also extends to her views on social status and reputation, what the Stoics called doxa. A key question to hold in mind is, who is her audience? For whom is she performing her life? Is she heavily invested in curating a perfect image on social media, consumed with likes, follows, and public perception? Does she name drop or seem overly impressed by titles and accolades? A Stoic values a good reputation only insofar as it might allow her to do more good, but her sense of worth is internally generated. She behaves with integrity whether anyone is watching or not because her moral compass is her only true audience. A misalignment here can create immense friction, as you may find yourself partnered with someone who constantly seeks validation from the crowd, making your private life feel like a public performance. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, explore her concept of a meaningful life. Pose open-ended questions like, what makes you feel most fulfilled? Or what kind of legacy would you want to leave? Her answers will illuminate her deepest drives. Does she describe a life of continuous learning, contribution to her community, deep relationships, and personal growth, all themes deeply resonant with Stoic practice? Or do her aspirations revolve around milestones of external achievement, a certain job title, a particular house, a level of income. Again, these things aren't bad, but if they are the source of her meaning rather than a potential venue for expressing her virtue, your fundamental life goals may be headed in different directions. Value congruence isn't about agreeing on every minor detail. It's about sharing a common direction on the most important map of all, the one that charts a course for a good and meaningful life. When your core values are in harmony, daily decisions become easier, conflicts become less personal, and the relationship itself becomes a shared project in living well, rather than a constant negotiation between competing worldviews. The true measure of a person's character is rarely found on their sunniest days, but rather in how they navigate the inevitable storms. This brings us to our fifth Stoic filter, perhaps one of the most practical and telling of all, the adversity response metric. Stoicism reframes our entire relationship with difficulty. The famous maxim, "the obstacle is the way," isn't just a catchy phrase, it's a radical call to action. It teaches that obstacles are not roadblocks to our path, they are the path. They are the very raw material we are given to practice our virtues, to build our strength, and to demonstrate our character. When evaluating a potential partner, observing her relationship with adversity is like getting a live demonstration of her inner operating system under stress. You're not just seeing who she is, you're seeing how she handles who she is when things get hard. To apply this metric, pay close attention to the stories she tells. Everyone has challenges, but the narrative around them is incredibly revealing. When she describes a past failure or a difficult period, listen for the posture she takes. Does she frame it as something that happened to her, an unfair event that derailed her life? Or does she describe it as something she moved through, an experience that, while painful, taught her something valuable and contributed to who she is today? The former suggests a passive recipient of fate, while the latter reveals an active participant in her own growth. A Stoic-minded individual can acknowledge the pain of a setback while simultaneously mining it for the lesson it contains. She might say, "Losing that job was terrifying, but it forced me to finally build the freelance career I'd always wanted." Or, "That heartbreak showed me my own patterns in relationships and I've worked hard to understand them." This ability to find agency and meaning even in hardship is a hallmark of resilience. Notice her real-time reactions to smaller, daily frustrations as well. These are the micro-adversities that constantly test us. How does she behave when the Wi-Fi cuts out during an important video call? When a friend cancels plans at the last minute? When she receives constructive criticism on a project, does a minor obstacle trigger a major meltdown, a cascade of complaining, blame, and visible frustration? Or does she take a breath, assess the new reality, and begin problem solving? This isn't about being emotionless, it's about the speed and grace with which she can metabolize disappointment and pivot. A person who can navigate a rained-out picnic with humor and adaptability is demonstrating the same muscle she'll use to navigate much larger life challenges. This flexibility is a sign of a mind that isn't rigidly attached to a single, perfect outcome, but is instead capable of creatively engaging with whatever reality presents. The most critical aspect of this filter is distinguishing between a defensive response and a creative one. A defensive response to adversity is characterized by rigidity and protection. She might shut down, become argumentative, blame others, or simply give up. It's a posture that says, "This shouldn't be happening and I refuse to engage with it." A creative response, however, is characterized by curiosity and flexibility. She asks, "Okay, this is the new situation. What are my options? What can I control here? How can I use this?" This is the essence of the Stoic turn. It's the difference between seeing a wall as a dead end and seeing it as an opportunity to learn how to climb, tunnel under, or build a door. A woman who responds creatively to problems isn't just an easier partner, she's an asset. She becomes a co-pilot in navigating life's complexities. someone who will help you find a way when your own creativity falters, turning shared challenges into shared victories rather than sources of conflict and resentment. While her response to present-day challenges is telling, a truly compatible partnership must also be able to look toward the horizon together without fear. This moves us to our sixth filter, which draws on one of the most powerful Stoic exercises, the premeditation of evils, or premeditatio malorum. This practice isn't about pessimistic worrying, it's a courageous form of mental rehearsal and proactive planning. By calmly envisioning potential future setbacks, from minor inconveniences to significant losses, we rob them of their power to shock us and prepare ourselves to respond with virtue rather than panic. Applying this as a filter means exploring not just what she wants for her future, but how she thinks about the future itself, especially its inherent uncertainties. You're assessing whether her vision is built on a foundation of rigid expectations or a flexible, Stoic-informed resilience. Begin this exploration by discussing goals and aspirations, but listen for the underlying philosophy. Everyone has dreams, but a Stoic aligns her desires with the understanding that outcomes are never guaranteed. So when she talks about her 5-year plan, pay attention to her attachment to it. Does she speak of it as a fixed, non-negotiable destination, stating that she will be a vice president by 35 or must own a home in a specific neighborhood? This kind of rigid attachment is a setup for suffering, as life rarely unfolds exactly as we script it. In contrast, a woman with a Stoic mindset might share the same ambitious goals but frame them as preferred outcomes. Her focus is on the process, the virtues of hard work, discipline, and continuous learning rather than the specific title or address. She understands that her effort is hers to control, but the final result is not. This flexibility is the bedrock of future-focused compatibility, as it means she won't be devastated if your shared path takes an unexpected turn. This leads directly into a conversation about lifestyle. Your day-to-day existence is where philosophy meets practice. Does her envisioned future require a specific high-consumption lifestyle to feel successful? Is her picture of happiness dependent on constant travel, a lavish social calendar, or accumulating certain status symbols? While these things can be enjoyable, a Stoic recognizes them as preferred indifference. They have no true bearing on her moral character or her capacity for fulfillment. A more aligned partner might describe a future rich in purpose and connection rather than luxury. She might value financial stability for the security and freedom it provides to help others or pursue meaningful work, not for the possessions it can buy. Her ideal lifestyle is built around practices that cultivate inner strength, like time in nature, deep conversations, creative pursuits, and a close-knit community, things that are largely within her control to create, regardless of external circumstances. The most crucial part of this filter is testing your philosophical alignment on life's uncertainties. This is where the premeditation of evils becomes a practical litmus test. Gently introduce scenarios that touch on common future challenges. You might ask, how would we handle it if one of us had to take a lower-paying job for a period to care for a family member? Or what's our game plan if the economy takes a downturn and we have to drastically tighten our budget? Her reaction is incredibly revealing. Does she recoil from the question, dismissing it as negative thinking or refusing to entertain unpleasant possibilities? Or does she engage with it thoughtfully, seeing it as a smart and responsible exercise in preparedness? A compatible partner will lean into these discussions. She'll understand that by anticipating challenges, you're not inviting them, you're building your collective resilience. She'll contribute ideas, discuss virtues like frugality and loyalty, and help you craft a what-if plan that makes both of you feel more secure and capable, not afraid. Ultimately, applying this filter helps you determine if you're building with a co-architect or a fair-weather passenger. A fair-weather passenger has signed up for a smooth cruise on sunny seas and will be the first to panic when the clouds roll in. A co-architect steeped in a Stoic approach helped you design the ship, knowing full well that storms are a part of any long journey. She doesn't just hope for the best, she prepares for reality, ensuring the vessel is strong, the navigation systems are sound, and the crew is well trained. When you share this future-focused mindset, you stop just dreaming about a life together and start building one that can withstand anything. Your relationship becomes a partnership forged not in the fantasy of a perfect future, but in the confident and capable management of a real one, complete with all its beautiful and unpredictable twists and turns. One of the most immediate and practical ways a Stoic mindset manifests is in how a person communicates, making this a powerful filter to apply from your very first conversations. Stoicism places immense value on clear, honest, and direct speech, not as a mere social skill, but as a direct reflection of a well-ordered mind. The Stoics believed that our words should be precise and purposeful, a tool for conveying truth and fostering understanding, never for manipulation, flattery, or obscuring reality. When you're evaluating a potential partner, you're essentially assessing whether her communication style builds bridges of trust or creates mazes of confusion. You're looking for someone who sees conversation as a shared search for clarity, not a battlefield for winning points or a stage for performing a curated version of herself. To apply this filter, observe both what she says and, just as importantly, how she says it. Direct communication is characterized by a lack of guesswork. She expresses her needs, her preferences, and her boundaries with a respectful clarity that makes her position known. If she's had a long day and needs some quiet time, she might say, "I'd love to see you, but I'm feeling pretty drained tonight. Could we plan for tomorrow instead?" This is starkly different from the indirect approach, which might involve creating a vague excuse, being short-tempered, hoping you'll ask what's wrong, or agreeing to plans while radiating resentment. The direct communicator takes ownership of her feelings and states her needs plainly, treating you as a teammate in finding a solution. The indirect communicator creates a puzzle for you to solve, often setting a trap where you can't win. If you don't notice she's upset, you're inattentive. If you ask what's wrong, you're pressuring her. This clarity is fundamentally rooted in a commitment to honesty, another core Stoic virtue. But this goes beyond simply not telling lies. You're assessing her commitment to intellectual honesty, the willingness to represent facts accurately, to correct herself if she misspeaks, and to admit when she doesn't know something. Notice how she talks about others. Does she gossip or share personal information that isn't hers to tell? This is a major red flag, as it shows a disregard for the trust others have placed in her, and it's a strong indicator that your confidence will be treated with the same carelessness. A woman who values truth will be careful with her words, understanding that her speech is a matter of her integrity. She won't make promises lightly because she knows her word is her bond, and breaking it damages her own character. Perhaps the most telling test of this filter is how she handles conflict and disagreement. Clear communication is easiest when everyone agrees. Its true strength is revealed under pressure. Does she use "I" statements to express how a situation made her feel, or does she launch into "you" accusations that put you on the defensive? For example, "I felt hurt when we had to cancel our plans," opens a dialogue. "You always cancel on me and you clearly don't care," is an attack that shuts it down. A Stoic-minded individual strives to separate the facts of the situation from her judgments about it, allowing for a more objective and less emotionally charged conversation. She aims to resolve the issue, not to punish the person. She avoids hyperbolic language like "you always" or "you never," which distort reality and escalate tensions unnecessarily. Finally, be highly attuned to any form of manipulative communication. This is the absolute antithesis of Stoic clarity. Manipulation can be subtle, guilt-tripping. "I guess I'll just spend the night alone. It's fine." Passive aggression, the pointed sigh followed by "nothing's wrong." Or love bombing with excessive praise and future faking to secure your attachment before revealing her true self. These are all strategies to control your behavior and emotions indirectly rather than engaging in an honest exchange of wants and needs. A woman who is secure in her values and possesses emotional maturity has no need for these games. She understands that healthy bonds are built on a foundation of transparent and trustworthy communication, where both people can be vulnerable without fear of their words being weaponized against them. When you find someone who speaks with this kind of direct and honest clarity, you've found a person you can build a real and lasting trust with, a partnership where you spend your energy enjoying each other's company, not decoding each other's messages. A Stoic seeks what the ancient Greeks called autarkeia, not a cold, isolated self-sufficiency, but a profound inner independence. This is the state of being content and complete within yourself, deriving your sense of worth from your own character and actions rather than from the validation or presence of another person. It is the absolute opposite of neediness. However, this is not a philosophy of isolation. The Stoics were deeply communal. They believed we are made for fellowship and that we have a duty to contribute to the common good. The ideal, then, is a beautiful and delicate balance, to be a whole, self-contained individual who chooses to intertwine her life with another whole individual, not out of lack but out of a shared abundance. This filter helps you identify whether a woman has achieved this balance, ensuring you enter a partnership of mutual empowerment, not mutual dependency. You can observe this balance first in how she speaks about her life before she met you and how she maintains it now. A woman with a strong sense of independence has a world that is full and compelling on its own. She has passions, projects, friendships, and goals that exist entirely separate from her romantic life. When you ask about her week, does she light up talking about her own pursuits, a course she's taking, a creative endeavor, her work, time with her friends? Or does her life seem to exist in a holding pattern, waiting for a relationship to give it meaning and direction? This isn't about how busy she is, it's about the source of her fulfillment. An independent person's happiness is generated internally, making her presence in your life a gift, not a demand. She is with you because she wants to be, not because she needs to be. This directly influences how she handles time apart. Does she respect and even encourage your own independence, understanding that time spent on your own hobbies and with your own friends is vital to your well-being? Or does she view it as a personal rejection, responding with clinginess, guilt, or anxiety? A woman who embodies the Stoic balance sees separate time as necessary fuel for the relationship itself. She knows that two interesting, evolving individuals bring far more to the table than two people who have fused into a single, codependent unit. She trusts the strength of your connection enough to not need constant reassurance through proximity. Her security isn't pinned to your constant attention. It's rooted in her own self-worth and her trust in the bond you're building together. Perhaps the most critical test of this filter is how she manages her emotional state. Does she hold you responsible for her happiness? If she's had a bad day, does she expect you to fix it, becoming upset if you can't instantly shift her mood? This is a hallmark of emotional dependency. In contrast, a self-sufficient partner practices emotional responsibility. She might share her frustrations with you, seeking connection and support, but she doesn't outsource the job of regulating her feelings to you. She has her own coping mechanisms, perhaps a workout, journaling, talking to a friend, or simply sitting with her emotions until they pass. She allows you to be a comforting witness to her process, not a therapist tasked with solving it. This makes the relationship a sanctuary, not a clinic. Ultimately, this balance creates the healthiest form of interdependence. It's the difference between two vines strangling each other as they scramble for sunlight and two strong, deeply rooted trees whose branches intertwine overhead, each drawing strength from its own roots while providing mutual shelter and support. A woman who maintains her identity and purpose within a relationship isn't withholding or less committed. She is offering you her whole, authentic self, not a hollowed-out version that exists only in relation to you. She is a partner who can stand beside you, not lean on you, making the relationship a conscious, daily choice of two free people, not a fragile contract of need. This is the Stoic ideal of love, not as a remedy for incompleteness, but as a shared celebration of wholeness. This ability to suspend judgment is more than just good manners. It's a core Stoic discipline for achieving a clear and accurate perception of reality. The Stoics called this practicing the reserve clause. We can pursue our plans and form our opinions, but we always do so with the silent caveat, fate permitting, or as far as the facts are clear. They understood that our initial impressions are often distorted by bias, emotion, or incomplete information, and that acting on these raw impressions is the source of most errors in judgment. Applying this as a filter means observing whether a woman has cultivated the mental habit of pausing before labeling, categorizing, or concluding, especially when faced with something or someone new and unfamiliar. You're looking for a mind that is more interested in understanding than in being right, more curious than certain. You can test this filter by paying close attention to her language, particularly when she describes other people. Does she frequently rely on broad stereotypes or sweeping generalizations? Listen for phrases like "all men are," "women always," or "people from that place are." This kind of categorical thinking is the antithesis of Stoic judgment. It reveals a mind that prefers the efficiency of prefabricated labels over the effort of individual assessment. In contrast, a woman who suspends judgment speaks with nuance and specificity. She might say, "I met a man who behaved in that way," or "in my experience, some people from that culture tend to." She focuses on individual actions and contexts, understanding that every person is a complex mix of influences and choices that can't be reduced to a single category. This intellectual humility is a sign of deep wisdom. Notice how she reacts to information that contradicts her existing beliefs. This is where the suspension of judgment is truly put to the test. If you present her with a compelling article or a personal story that challenges a viewpoint she holds, does she become defensive, immediately looking for flaws in the source or arguments to rebut it? Or does she lean in with genuine curiosity, asking questions to understand the other perspective better, even if she doesn't ultimately agree with it? A Stoic-minded individual treats her own beliefs as provisional, always open to revision in the face of new, compelling evidence. She sees being wrong not as a personal failure, but as an opportunity to update her understanding and get closer to the truth. A closed mind, one that rushes to judgment and then defends it rigidly, is incapable of this kind of growth and will create a relationship where learning and evolving together becomes impossible. This filter also applies directly to how she interprets your actions, especially in moments of potential misunderstanding. Imagine you're running late because you were caught in an unexpected traffic jam. A person prone to quick judgment might immediately assume you're disrespectful of her time or that you're being careless. She forms a negative story based on the impression of your lateness alone. A woman who practices suspension of judgment will first seek clarity. She might text, "just checking in, is everything okay?" She withholds the internal narrative until she has more facts. When you explain the situation, she accepts the reasonable explanation without suspicion or accusations, because her default setting is to grant the benefit of the doubt rather than assume the worst. This creates an atmosphere of immense psychological safety in a relationship where you don't feel you're constantly on trial for minor infractions. Ultimately, this habit is about the pursuit of objective truth over subjective opinion. The Stoic goal is to see the world as it actually is, not as we fear it might be or wish it would be. A partner who rushes to judgment is living in a world of her own projections and assumptions, which means you will constantly be navigating her reactions to a reality she has invented, not the one you both actually share. A partner who suspends judgment is a fellow investigator into the truth of things. She creates a relationship built on a foundation of clear seeing and mutual understanding, where conflicts are resolved by seeking facts rather than assigning blame, and where both of you are free to be complex, imperfect human beings without the constant fear of being unfairly categorized or misunderstood. Gratitude, in the Stoic sense, is far more than a simple thank you. It is a profound and active recognition of the abundance that already exists in one's life, a deep-seated appreciation for the present moment and the tools one has been given, regardless of their scale. It is the antidote to the endless craving for more that defines so much of modern life. The Stoics practiced gratitude not as a passive feeling but as a disciplined exercise, a way of reorienting their attention away from what they lacked and toward the countless gifts already at their disposal, from the air in their lungs to the capacity for reason in their minds. This 10th filter, the Gratitude and Contentment Assessment, asks you to observe whether a potential partner operates from this place of inner abundance or is perpetually leaning into a future where happiness is conditional on the next acquisition, achievement, or experience. You are essentially determining if her sense of well-being is internally generated or externally contingent. You can begin this assessment by listening carefully to the general tone of her conversation. Does she frequently speak in terms of what's missing? Is her language peppered with if only statements? If only I made more money, then I could be happy. Or if only I had a different job, then I wouldn't be so stressed. This framing places happiness perpetually on the horizon, always just out of reach. In stark contrast, a woman with a grateful disposition speaks from a place of noticing what is already good. She might express appreciation for a simple pleasure, a perfectly brewed cup of coffee, a sunny day, a helpful gesture from a stranger. This isn't about naive positivity. It's about a conscious choice to acknowledge the good that is already present. Her happiness isn't waiting for a future condition to be met. It is being actively cultivated in the present through her focus. This extends dramatically to her relationship with material possessions and social status. Observe how she reacts to the good fortune of others. When a friend gets a promotion, buys a new car, or goes on a luxurious vacation, does she respond with genuine enthusiasm and celebration for them, or does it trigger a visible sense of lack and comparison in herself? The latter often manifests as subtle put-downs, immediate shifts in conversation to her own desires, or a deflated demeanor. A person grounded in gratitude can truly delight in another's success because her own sense of worth is not threatened by it. She doesn't see life as a finite pie where someone else's bigger slice means less for her. She understands that abundance is not a scarcity, and another's joy can actually amplify her own. Perhaps the most telling arena for this filter is how she handles desire itself. There's nothing wrong with wanting things, but a Stoic examines the nature of that want. Is it a relaxed preference for something that might enhance an already good life, or is it a restless, anxious need that she believes is essential for her happiness? You might notice this in how she shops or talks about wanting something. Does the acquisition of a desired object bring her a lasting sense of satisfaction, or does the thrill quickly fade, immediately replaced by a new craving for the next thing? This cycle of desire, acquisition, and dissatisfaction is what the Stoics warned against: the hamster wheel of external validation. A woman who embodies contentment might desire a nice pair of shoes, but she will derive just as much genuine enjoyment from the pair she already owns. Her world is not partitioned into things I have that make me happy and things I don't have that are preventing my happiness. She carries her happiness with her, making her desires light preferences rather than heavy demands. Ultimately, applying this filter helps you find a partner who brings a sense of peace and abundance into your life, rather than a vacuum of constant want. A grateful, content woman is not lacking in ambition. She is simply ambitious from a full cup, not an empty one. Her drive comes from a place of wanting to express her talents and contribute, not from a desperate need to fill a void with achievements. She appreciates the journey itself, the daily process of living, rather than fixating on some distant destination. Building a life with someone like this means your shared existence is infused with a quiet joy and appreciation for the ordinary moments. You are not constantly trying to keep up with a moving target of her unmet conditions for happiness. Instead, you are two people already full, choosing to share your abundance with each other, making every day together feel like enough. This brings us to our 11th filter, a crucial one for assessing not just how she lives, but when she lives. The Stoics possessed a unique and powerful relationship with time. They placed immense value on the present moment, the only slice of time that is truly within our control, while also wisely planning for the future and calmly accepting the unchangeable past. This is the time perspective filter, and it helps you see if a woman is psychologically trapped in yesterday's regrets or tomorrow's worries, or if she has cultivated the ability to be fully engaged and effective in the here and now. You're essentially mapping her temporal orientation to see if it fosters anxiety or action, regret or resolution. You can begin to apply this filter by listening to how she talks about her past. Does she frequently revisit old mistakes with a sense of lingering bitterness or shame, as if those events are still actively happening to her? You might hear phrases like, "I'll never get over what happened," or "If only I hadn't done that, my life would be completely different now." This indicates a past negative perspective where history is a weight she carries, preventing her from moving forward with clarity and energy. In contrast, a Stoic approach acknowledges the past as a teacher, not a jailer. A woman with a healthy temporal perspective can discuss past failures with a sense of detached learning. She might say, "That was a painful lesson, but it taught me to be more discerning with my trust," or "I made the best decision I could with the information I had at the time." She has taken the lesson and left the emotional baggage behind, understanding that the past is a place of reference, not residence. Now, turn your attention to her relationship with the future. Is she a chronic worrier, constantly playing out catastrophic, what-if scenarios in her mind? This future anxious orientation is a major source of suffering, as it has her battling phantoms that don't yet exist and may never come to pass. You might notice this if she struggles to enjoy a pleasant evening because she's already dreading a work meeting 3 days away, or if a minor symptom immediately spirals into a diagnosis of a terrible illness in her imagination. The Stoic alternative is not to ignore the future, but to engage with it through the practice of premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. This is a calm, strategic rehearsal of potential challenges, done not to induce fear, but to build resilience and develop contingency plans. A woman who does this might say, "I'm a little nervous about that presentation, so I'm going to prepare extra thoroughly and also think about what I'll do if it doesn't go perfectly." She addresses the future with preparedness, not panic. The most telling sign of a healthy time perspective is her capacity for present-minded engagement. This is the Stoic ideal, to fully inhabit the current moment, not because it's perfect, but because it's the only arena where you can actually live your life and exercise your virtues. You can observe this in the simplest of interactions. When you're having a conversation with her, is her phone face down and ignored, her attention fully on you? Or is she constantly glancing at notifications, her mind clearly elsewhere? Does she seem to savor experiences, truly tasting her food, appreciating a beautiful view, laughing wholeheartedly at a joke? Or does she rush through them on her way to the next thing, often filming the moment for later rather than experiencing it now? A present-oriented person derives deep satisfaction from the current activity, whatever it may be, because she understands that a life well-lived is just a series of well-lived moments. Ultimately, applying this filter helps you find a partner who brings a sense of calm and focus to your shared life. A woman who is stuck in the past will bring old hurts and resentments into your relationship, potentially seeing you through the lens of people who are no longer there. A woman who is anxious about the future will inject a constant, low-level stress into your dynamic, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. But a woman who has mastered her time perspective in the Stoic fashion is a grounded and powerful partner. She learns from the past without dwelling there, prepares for the future without fearing it, and invests her full energy into building a meaningful life with you today. She understands that now is the only time we are ever actually given, and she chooses to make the most of it. This leads us to a profoundly practical and often revealing Stoic filter, the evaluation of her social circle and influences. The Stoics were unequivocal about the importance of our associations. Seneca wrote, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve." Epictetus was even more direct, warning that we become like the people we spend our time with, absorbing their values and habits almost by osmosis. This isn't about elitism or snobbery. It's a clear-eyed recognition of a fundamental human truth. We are deeply influenced by our environment, and the people in it are the most active component. When you're considering a woman's long-term potential, observing the company she keeps provides an invaluable, unfiltered look at her own character, her standards, and the kind of life she is actively choosing to build. Begin this evaluation not with judgment but with curious observation. Pay attention to how she speaks about her closest friends. Does she describe them with admiration, respect, and genuine affection? Does she highlight their strengths, their accomplishments, and their good character? A woman who surrounds herself with people she truly esteems is signaling her own values. She is consciously choosing to be influenced by qualities she finds admirable. Conversely, listen for how she discusses conflicts within her friendships. Does she approach disagreements with loyalty and a desire for understanding, or does she frequently engage in gossip, betrayal, and petty drama? A person who is quick to betray the confidence of a friend in order to share a juicy story with you is showing you exactly how she will handle your own confidences down the line. Her treatment of her friends is a powerful preview of her capacity for loyalty and discretion. The quality of her friendships is also a major indicator. Are her relationships largely transactional, based on what she can get from others or what others can do for her? Or are they built on a foundation of mutual respect, shared values, and genuine support? You can often see this in times of crisis. When a friend is going through a hard time, does she show up with practical help and a listening ear, or does she distance herself from the negative energy? The Stoic virtue of justice, our duty to our fellow humans, is lived out in our friendships. A woman whose friendships are deep, supportive, and lasting demonstrates a capacity for the kind of selfless loyalty and commitment that forms the bedrock of a strong romantic partnership. Her friends are her chosen family, and how she nurtures those bonds speaks volumes. Extend this observation to her family relationships, but do so with immense grace and understanding. Family dynamics are complex and often fraught with history that isn't immediately visible. You're not looking for a picture-perfect relationship with her parents. You're observing the quality of the interaction, however it may be structured. Does she speak about her family with a sense of basic respect, even if there are clear boundaries in place? Has she taken Stoic-minded ownership of her role within those relationships, working to heal what she can and accept what she cannot change? Or is she still deeply entangled in old patterns of blame, resentment, and unresolved conflict? While past family wounds are not her fault, her adult approach to managing them is her responsibility. A pattern of bitter, ongoing hostility may indicate unresolved issues that could easily spill over into your relationship, whereas a mature approach to complex family ties, even if that means loving from a healthy distance, shows emotional maturity and wise boundary setting. Finally, and crucially, consider her chosen influences, the people she looks up to, the authors she reads, the thinkers and creators she follows. In the modern world, our social circle extends far beyond our immediate physical contacts to include the voices we invite into our minds through podcasts, books, and social media. Who are her role models? What kind of content does she consume and recommend? Does she follow thought leaders who promote victimhood, materialism, and superficiality, or those who encourage virtue, resilience, and personal growth? A woman whose intellectual diet consists of influencers preaching a gospel of external validation and lack of accountability is being subtly shaped by those values every day. In contrast, a woman who seeks out wisdom from ancient Stoic texts to modern philosophers and scientists is actively cultivating her mind and character. She is choosing to be influenced by ideas that elevate her, and by extension, she will elevate you. The company she keeps, both in person and in spirit, is the clearest map to the destination where her life is headed. Choosing a partner is, in many ways, choosing to embark on that journey with her. The next filter cuts straight to the heart of Stoic virtue, moving beyond what a person says to scrutinize the one thing that truly matters, what they do. This is the integrity consistency check. For the Stoics, integrity wasn't a sometimes virtue. It was the seamless alignment of one's actions with one's professed principles, regardless of the audience, the circumstance, or the potential personal cost. It's the discipline of acting according to your nature as a rational being, which means acting with honor, even when it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, or completely private. Applying this filter means you become a gentle detective of her character, not by accusation, but by quiet observation, looking for the reassuring pattern of a person whose inner compass points in one steady direction, no matter which way the wind is blowing. You start this check by listening carefully to the values she claims to hold dear. Most people will tell you they value honesty, kindness, loyalty, and hard work. The critical work begins when you observe if her behavior confirms or contradicts these statements across a wide variety of situations. The key here is context. Everyone can be kind when they're having a good day and dealing with someone they like. The test of integrity is how she behaves when she's stressed, tired, anonymous, or stands to gain something by cutting a corner. Does the woman who preaches honesty quickly shift a small blame onto a coworker to avoid a minor reprimand? Does the person who values loyalty readily participate in gossip about a mutual friend the moment that friend leaves the room? These micro moments of misalignment are the most telling data points, revealing a gap between her aspirational self and her operational self. This evaluation is most powerful when you can witness her behavior in low-stakes, anonymous environments. Observe how she treats service staff, customer support agents on the phone, or other drivers in traffic. In these moments, she is not performing for you or anyone else who knows her. She is operating from her default setting. A person of true integrity doesn't need an audience to act rightly. She will hold the door for a stranger, return the extra change a cashier accidentally gave her, and wait patiently in line, not because she is being watched, but because it is who she is. Her principles are not a costume she puts on for social occasions. They are her skin. If her kindness and respect are conditional, generous to the restaurant manager but curt with the busboy, you are seeing a performance, not a principle. A profound aspect of this Stoic filter involves watching how she handles being wrong. A person with shaky integrity will often double down on a mistake, refusing to acknowledge it in order to preserve a fragile self-image of being right. She might bend the truth, omit key details, or become defensive if a contradiction in her story is gently pointed out. In contrast, a woman with deep integrity possesses the intellectual honesty to immediately own her error. You might hear her say, "You know what, I was just thinking about that and I completely misspoke earlier," or "I need to correct myself, that wasn't entirely accurate." This ability to openly self-correct is a sign of immense strength and security. She values truth and consistency more than she values the temporary discomfort of admitting a flaw, which is the very essence of Stoic courage applied to daily life. Finally, apply this check to her commitments, both large and small. Integrity is built in the smallest promises kept. Does she follow through on the things she says she'll do, whether it's calling when she said she would, finishing a task she promised to handle, or showing up on time? When a genuine emergency prevents her from fulfilling a commitment, does she offer a sincere apology and a reasonable explanation, or does she offer a flimsy excuse and expect you to simply accept it? A pattern of unreliability, of overpromising and underdelivering, is a fundamental failure of integrity. It demonstrates a lack of respect for other people's time and expectations, and it shows that her word is not her bond. A Stoic understands that every commitment, no matter how small, is a test of one's character. When you find a woman whose actions form a consistent, unwavering line with her words, you have found someone you can build an unshakable trust with, a partnership where you never have to wonder which version of her you're going to get, because there is only one. Now, let's turn our attention to one of the most revealing arenas of human character: how a person handles disagreement. This brings us to our 14th Stoic filter, the conflict resolution approach. For the Stoics, conflict wasn't something to be avoided at all costs or won through domination. It was an inevitable and even valuable part of human interaction, a chance to practice reason, justice, and courage in real time. The goal was never to be right, but to be correct, to move closer to a shared understanding and a mutually beneficial solution. When evaluating a potential partner, observing her default approach to disagreement is like getting a live demonstration of her emotional maturity and her respect for you as an equal. You're looking to see if she views conflict as a threat to be neutralized or as a puzzle to be solved together, with curiosity and a calm mind. You can begin applying this filter by paying close attention to the very first moments of a minor disagreement or a difference of opinion. Does her physiological state shift immediately? Do you see her jaw clench, her posture stiffen, or her voice take on a sharp, defensive edge? These are signs that her emotional brain has been hijacked, interpreting the disagreement as a personal attack. A woman with a Stoic-aligned approach will likely maintain a more open and relaxed posture. She might even take a deliberate breath before responding, creating a crucial pause between the stimulus of your differing view and her response. This small space is where reason has a chance to intervene, and its presence is a powerful indicator of self-awareness and emotional regulation. She understands that her first impression of the conflict is just that, an impression, and it requires examination before she acts on it. Listen carefully to the language she uses when a conflict arises. Is it filled with accusatory you statements and absolute language? Phrases like "you always do this" or "you never listen" are designed to escalate and assign blame. They generalize a single incident into a character flaw, making the other person feel attacked and defensive. In contrast, a problem-solving orientation is revealed through I statements and specific, observable facts. She might say, "I felt concerned when I noticed we were late because I value punctuality," or "My understanding was that we had agreed on 7 o'clock. Can you help me understand what happened?" This language frames the issue as a shared problem to be understood, not a verdict to be delivered. It invites collaboration instead of triggering defensiveness, demonstrating that her primary goal is resolution, not victory. A critical component of the Stoic method is the ability to separate the person from the problem and to detach one's own ego from the outcome. You can assess this by observing whether she can genuinely consider your perspective without feeling that her entire identity is under threat. Does she interrupt to rebut your points before you've finished explaining them? Or does she practice active listening, asking clarifying questions like, "So what I'm hearing you say is that right?" This curious, investigative approach is a hallmark of wisdom. It shows that she is more interested in discovering the objective truth of the situation than in defending her subjective version of it. She operates from the Stoic understanding that we all perceive the world through our own imperfect lenses, and a disagreement is often just two partial truths trying to form a complete picture. Finally, observe the conclusion of your disagreements, however small they may be. Does she hold onto resentment, allowing the issue to simmer and resurface later in unrelated arguments? Or does she work toward a clear resolution and a genuine repair? A Stoic-minded partner seeks closure. This doesn't mean every issue is perfectly solved, but it does mean that both parties feel heard and that a mutual understanding, or at least a respectful agreement to move forward, has been reached. She might be the one to say, "Okay, so we'll try it this way next time and see if that works better for both of us." This ability to navigate conflict to a productive end without leaving lingering emotional debris is perhaps the strongest sign that you're with someone who sees you as a teammate, not an adversary. It transforms potential relationship-ending arguments into opportunities to build deeper trust and a stronger partnership. A life committed to Stoic principles is a life dedicated to never standing still, to the continuous honing of one's character and the expansion of one's understanding. This philosophy views the journey of self-improvement not as a chore, but as the very purpose of our existence. We are here to learn, to grow, to become slightly better versions of ourselves with each passing day. This brings us to our 15th filter, one that looks for this vital spark of evolution in a potential partner, the personal growth orientation. You're not just evaluating who she is today, but assessing her trajectory. Is she actively cultivating her mind and character, or has she settled into a fixed, complacent version of herself? A growth-oriented individual brings a dynamic energy to a relationship, ensuring it evolves and deepens over time rather than stagnating. You can begin to apply this filter by listening for her relationship with curiosity itself. Does she possess a genuine, active interest in the world around her? This goes beyond passive consumption of entertainment. A growth-minded woman asks questions, deep, thoughtful questions about how things work, why people behave the way they do, and what lies beneath the surface of events. She reads books not just for escapism, but to understand different perspectives and gather wisdom. She might listen to podcasts on history, science, or philosophy, take online courses on subjects that intrigue her, or seek out documentaries that challenge her worldview. Her curiosity isn't performative, it's a fundamental driver, a reflection of her understanding that there is always more to learn, and that true knowledge begins with admitting what one does not know. This intellectual humility is a cornerstone of the Stoic approach to growth. It's the opposite of intellectual arrogance. You can observe this in how she handles being corrected or encountering information that contradicts her beliefs. A person with a fixed mindset will often become defensive, rejecting new evidence to protect her ego. A person with a growth mindset, however, displays intellectual flexibility. She can say, "I hadn't considered that," or "You're right, my information was outdated." She sees being wrong not as a personal failure, but as a valuable opportunity to update her mental model of the world and get closer to the truth. This creates a relationship where you can learn from each other, where conversations become a collaborative search for understanding rather than a series of debates to be won. Beyond intellectual pursuits, this filter deeply involves her approach to her own flaws and mistakes. A Stoic doesn't hide from her shortcomings. She actively seeks them out through rigorous self-reflection, believing that we cannot fix what we refuse to see. Does this woman engage in any form of regular self-examination? This might look like journaling, meditation, or simply setting aside quiet time to review her actions and reactions from the day. More importantly, when she identifies a character flaw, perhaps a tendency toward impatience, a struggle with jealousy, or a pattern of avoidance, does she take tangible steps to work on it? She might discuss it with a trusted friend or therapist, read books on the subject, or consciously practice a new behavior. This commitment to working on her own inner knots is perhaps the strongest sign of a true growth orientation. It shows she is a willing participant in her own evolution, not expecting a partner to accommodate all her unresolved issues. Finally, observe her relationship with challenge and difficulty through this lens. For a growth-oriented individual, comfort is not the goal, mastery is. She willingly steps outside her comfort zone because she understands that growth happens only at the edges of our current capabilities. This might mean taking on a difficult project at work that will stretch her skills, learning a new language, training for a physical event, or tackling a complex creative endeavor. She doesn't shy away from things she's not immediately good at. Her motivation is the progress itself, the satisfaction of slowly transforming inability into competence. This is incredibly attractive and creates a powerful synergy in a relationship. You become two people encouraging each other to take on new challenges, celebrating each other's efforts as much as your successes, and building a shared life that is constantly expanding in its possibilities, never shrinking into a routine of mere comfort and convenience. A partner like this ensures that your life together is never boring because she is never finished becoming. The Stoic view of money is one of the most practical and liberating aspects of the philosophy, and applying it as a filter can save you from immense long-term conflict. The Stoics classified wealth as a preferred indifferent. This doesn't mean money is bad or should be ignored. It means it has no inherent moral value. Its value is entirely determined by how it is used. Money is a tool like a hammer. A hammer can be used to build a house or to harm someone. Its moral weight comes from the character and intention of the person wielding it. Similarly, money can be a tool for creating security, freedom, and good in the world, or it can be a master that breeds anxiety, greed, and endless dissatisfaction. When evaluating a partner, you're not just looking at her bank account balance. You're conducting a deep audit of her relationship with this powerful tool, seeking alignment with a philosophy of utility over status and freedom over possession. You can begin this assessment by observing her language around money and possessions. Listen for the stories she tells. Does she frequently speak about things she wants to acquire, framing her desires in terms of what she lacks? Or does she speak more about experiences she wants to have or skills she wants to develop? A woman whose financial philosophy is aligned with Stoicism might say, "I'm saving for a trip to Japan to experience the culture," which frames money as a means to an enriching end. In contrast, a more materialistic orientation might sound like, "I need to get the new iPhone as soon as it comes out," where the acquisition itself is the goal. Pay close attention to how she discusses the purchases of others. Does she express genuine admiration for someone's new car or home, or does her commentary carry a tone of envy, comparison, or judgment about its cost? A Stoic-minded individual might appreciate the aesthetic beauty of a nice car without needing to know its price tag to determine its worth, because her own sense of worth isn't tied to competing with it. This extends directly into her spending habits, which are the clearest indicator of her true values. The Stoic virtue of temperance, moderation, and self-control is vividly displayed in financial behavior. You're looking for signs of intentionality. Does she budget thoughtfully, allocating resources to her priorities, whether that's saving for a home, investing in her education, or supporting causes she believes in? Or does she seem to be a victim of her impulses, frequently making emotional purchases she later regrets, or living in a cycle of debt to fund a lifestyle she can't sustain? This isn't about how much she earns, it's about the gap between her income and her contentment. A woman with a healthy financial philosophy can be content and feel abundant whether she is cooking a simple meal at home or enjoying a fine dining experience, because her joy isn't manufactured by the price tag. She derives pleasure from the quality of the experience itself, not from the social signaling of its cost. Perhaps the most critical part of this filter is gauging her understanding of the fundamental Stoic distinction between needs and wants. A need is something required for survival and basic well-being. nutritious food, safe shelter, health care. A want is everything else, the vast universe of desires that modern marketing convinces us are essential for happiness. A woman who embodies a Stoic approach can navigate this distinction with clarity. She fulfills her needs responsibly and approaches her wants with mindful discernment. She might deeply want a beautiful piece of art for her home, but she will save for it deliberately rather than going into debt for it, understanding that the desire is a preference, not a necessity. Her sense of security comes from her own resilience and resourcefulness, not from the thickness of her wallet. She knows that the most valuable things in life, integrity, friendship, peace of mind, are utterly free. Ultimately, applying this financial philosophy filter helps you determine if you are building a life with a fellow architect or with a fellow consumer. A consumer sees a relationship as a vehicle to acquire a higher standard of living. Her focus is on what the partnership can get. An architect sees the relationship itself as the project, and money is simply one of the many tools available to build it strong, beautiful, and secure. Her focus is on what the partnership can create. When your financial philosophies are aligned, conversations about money become collaborative strategy sessions about shared goals and values, not stressful battles over scarcity and control. You are united not by what you possess, but by your shared understanding that you are the masters of your money, not its servants, and that true wealth isn't measured in a bank statement, but in a mind that is free from the endless anxiety of wanting more. A truly telling sign of character lies in the quiet question of where a person sources their sense of self-worth. For the Stoic, this is the most fundamental of all questions, and the answer is unequivocal. Our value is determined solely by our own virtue and the integrity of our actions. It is an internally generated, self-contained merit that remains unshaken by either the applause or the scorn of the outside world. This 17th filter, the external validation dependency test, asks you to look beyond a woman's surface confidence to observe the subtle, and not so subtle ways she might be outsourcing her self-esteem, relying on the ever-changing opinions of others to feel good about herself. This dependency is a fragile foundation for any individual, and by extension for any relationship, as it creates a partner who is perpetually unstable, whose mood and sense of security fluctuate with the latest like count or critical comment. One of the most visible arenas for this test in the modern world is without a doubt her relationship with social media. This isn't about whether she uses these platforms, but how she uses them. Is her scrolling primarily a tool for connection, inspiration, and sharing genuine moments from a life already well lived offline? Or does it appear to be the central stage upon which her identity is performed? Pay attention to the nature of her posts. Are they authentic snapshots of her real life and interests, or are they highly curated, filtered, and posed images designed to project a specific, idealized version of reality? Notice her behavior after posting. Does she seem distracted, constantly checking her phone for notifications and visibly brightening or dimming based on the volume of engagement? A woman whose self-worth is internally anchored might enjoy sharing a photo from a beautiful hike, but her enjoyment of the hike itself was complete and fulfilling without the subsequent validation. For the validation-dependent person, the experience itself can feel secondary to its potential as content. The real enjoyment comes from the external approval it generates. This need for validation often extends far beyond the digital realm and into her daily conversations and decision-making. Listen for the frequency of what we might call approval-seeking language. Does she often preface statements with "people say that I," or conclude stories by highlighting the praise she received from an authority figure? In conversations about her choices, from a career move to a simple purchase, does she consistently reference how others will perceive her decision or whether her friends will approve? For instance, she might choose a restaurant not based on the cuisine she craves, but on its perceived trendiness and what it says about her to be seen there. A Stoic-aligned individual makes choices based on her own reasoned judgment and values. She might seek counsel from trusted friends, but the final decision is hers, made against the internal barometer of what is right and good for her, not what will win the most social approval. Another powerful indicator is her reaction to criticism, even the mildest and most constructive kind. A person who derives her worth from within can receive feedback without personalizing it into a catastrophic attack on her entire being. She can separate the critique of a single action from a judgment of her character. She might not enjoy it, but she can consider it calmly and extract any useful kernel of truth. In stark contrast, a validation-dependent person often reacts to even gentle criticism with disproportionate defensiveness, hurt, or anger. Because her sense of self is built on a fragile house of cards made of others' good opinions, any critical comment feels like a direct threat to the entire structure. She may become flustered, make excuses, or immediately attempt to shift the blame. This defensiveness makes honest, growth-oriented communication in a relationship nearly impossible, as any attempt to address an issue is interpreted not as a problem to be solved, but as a personal affront to be defended against. Ultimately, applying this filter helps you find a partner who is emotionally self-sufficient. She is the author of her own self-esteem, which means her presence in your life is a stable, consistent, and generous gift. She isn't with you because you boost her status or complete her. She is with you as a whole person, choosing to share her abundance with another whole person. You never have to worry about managing her fragile ego or constantly reassuring her of her worth. Her inner light burns on its own fuel, making your relationship a partnership of two bright, independent flames coming together to create a stronger, more radiant light, rather than one person desperately seeking a match to ignite their own. The Stoic commitment to caring for the mind and body wasn't a recommendation for optimal performance. It was a non-negotiable duty. The ancient philosophers viewed our physical form as the vessel for our rational faculty, the vehicle through which we practice virtue in the world. To neglect this vessel through laziness, gluttony, or disregard was seen as a failure of one's fundamental responsibility. As Musonius Rufus taught, you wouldn't expect a good musician to play a fine instrument carelessly, so how can a rational soul treat its body with anything less than respect? This 18th filter, the Health and Discipline Assessment, moves beyond superficial aesthetics to evaluate whether a woman demonstrates this foundational Stoic respect for her holistic well-being through consistent, disciplined habits. You're looking for evidence that she views her body and mind as assets to be maintained, not obstacles to be indulged or ignored. You can begin applying this filter by observing her daily routines and rhythms, not as a rigid checklist, but as a reflection of her self-regard. Discipline, in the Stoic sense, isn't about punishment or deprivation. It's the structure that creates freedom. It's the conscious ordering of one's life to support one's highest goals. Does her week have a discernible rhythm that includes time for physical movement, adequate rest, and nutritious eating? This isn't about being a professional athlete or a gourmet chef. It's about intentionality. A woman aligned with this principle might prioritize a morning walk because she knows it clears her mind for the day, or she meal preps on Sundays not to achieve a certain physique, but to ensure she has the energy to be effective in her work and present in her relationships. Her habits are chosen, not accidental. They are the practical application of the virtue of temperance, managing her impulses for immediate gratification in service of her long-term well-being. This extends profoundly into her relationship with mental health. The Stoics were pioneers of cognitive hygiene, creating practices like negative visualization and evening journaling to purge anxiety and examine their impressions. In a modern context, this translates to a proactive approach to mental maintenance. Does she have healthy coping mechanisms for stress that don't involve simply numbing out or dumping her emotions onto others? You might notice she has a meditation practice, uses journaling to process her thoughts, or knows when to disconnect from digital stimulation and spend time in nature to recharge. Perhaps she recognizes when she's reaching her emotional limits and takes space to regulate herself rather than expecting others to manage her mood. This isn't about never feeling sad or anxious. It's about having a toolkit and the self-awareness to use it. A woman who neglects her mental hygiene will be constantly reactive, her emotional state dictated by external events. In contrast, a woman who tends to her mind creates a stable inner foundation from which she can engage with the world and with you from a place of strength and balance. Perhaps the most telling aspect of this filter is how she discusses her own body and health. Listen to her language. Does she speak about her body with kindness and functionality in mind, appreciating its strength and capabilities? Or is her dialogue dominated by criticism, focused solely on appearance and comparison to unrealistic ideals? The Stoic view is one of utility and gratitude. She is grateful for legs that allow her to hike, for a mind that allows her to learn, for senses that allow her to experience the world's beauty. This grateful functionality is worlds apart from a vanity-driven obsession with image. Similarly, observe her approach to rest. Does she view sleep as a vital component of health and cognitive function, or does she wear her exhaustion as a badge of honor, boasting about how little rest she needs to get everything done? The former shows wisdom and respect for her biological needs. The latter often signals a misplaced sense of productivity tied to self-worth. A woman who has mastered this aspect of Stoicism doesn't see discipline as a grind. She sees it as the highest form of self-respect, the daily practice that keeps her instrument tuned so she can play the music of her life with clarity, energy, and purpose. A powerful and often overlooked litmus test for a truly grounded individual is her capacity to process and release the inevitable injuries of life. This brings us to our 19th Stoic filter, the forgiveness and letting go capacity. For the Stoics, forgiveness was not about condoning bad behavior or pretending a hurt didn't matter. It was a profoundly self-interested and rational act of releasing the poison of resentment that, left unchecked, harms the vessel that holds it far more than the person who caused the original offense. Holding a grudge in the Stoic view is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. It's a voluntary act of self-harm that chains you to the past. When evaluating a woman's long-term potential, observing her relationship with past hurts is critical, as it reveals her emotional maturity, her capacity for rational perspective, and her commitment to her own peace of mind. You can begin to apply this filter by listening closely to the stories she tells about her past, particularly about conflicts or betrayals. Everyone has been wronged at some point. The telling detail is in the emotional charge the story still carries. Does she recount a hurt from years ago with the same fresh intensity and anger as if it happened yesterday? Does she meticulously detail the wrongs done to her, almost reliving the experience as she speaks? This is a sign that the event is still an open, festering wound, not a healed scar. In contrast, a woman who has practiced genuine forgiveness can discuss the same event with a sense of detached closure. She might acknowledge the pain it caused and the lesson it taught, but the raw, reactive emotion is no longer attached to the memory. She speaks about it as a chapter in her history that is finished, not a current reality she is still battling. This ability is deeply tied to the Stoic discipline of distinguishing between what we can and cannot control. A person who struggles to forgive is often still trying to control the past, wishing it had been different, raging against the unfairness of it, or seeking a form of justice or apology that may never come. She is fighting a battle that is already over, wasting precious present moment energy on a ghost. A Stoic-minded individual accepts the past as exactly that past. It is firmly in the category of things outside her control. Her focus shifts entirely to the one thing she can control, her current interpretation of the event and her choice to either hold onto it or release it. She chooses to release it not for the sake of the other person, but for her own freedom. She understands that her peace is too valuable to be held hostage by someone else's actions, no matter how wrong they were. Observe how she handles smaller, more recent irritations and slights. Does she have a tendency to collect and catalogue minor offenses, adding them to a running mental list of grievances? You might notice she brings up a tiny slight from weeks ago during a completely unrelated disagreement, using it as ammunition. This pattern of scorekeeping is the antithesis of Stoic forgiveness. It's a practice of perpetual resentment. A woman with a strong capacity for letting go addresses issues in the moment if necessary, and then consciously chooses to wipe the slate clean. She operates on the principle that people, including you, are generally doing their best and that most offenses are not malicious personal attacks, but the result of misunderstanding, stress, or human error. She grants the grace she would hope to receive herself, understanding that everyone has bad days and moments of poor judgment. Ultimately, applying this filter helps you find a partner who brings emotional lightness and forward momentum into your life, rather than the heavy baggage of past battles. A woman who can forgive and let go is not a pushover. She is a realist with strong boundaries. She may choose to remove someone toxic from her life entirely, but she does so without carrying a burning torch of hatred for them. She simply moves on, her energy directed toward building a positive present and future. Building a life with someone like this means your relationship will not be dragged down by the ghosts of her past relationships, family dramas, or old friendships gone wrong. It creates a space of emotional safety where mistakes can be acknowledged, discussed, and forgiven, allowing trust to deepen rather than erode over time. She understands that to cling to resentment is to be anchored to the past, while to forgive is to set sail toward a future of your own choosing, unburdened and free. Where a person comes from and the relational patterns they've experienced hold invaluable data for the Stoic seeking a compatible partner, not as a means to judge, but as a way to understand the very fabric of her character and expectations. This 20th filter, examining family values and relationship history, is not about digging for dirt or holding past mistakes against her. It is a thoughtful, compassionate inquiry into the lessons she has chosen to learn from her experiences. The Stoic is not concerned with the events themselves, which are now in the past and outside anyone's control, but with the judgments she has formed about those events and the wisdom she has extracted from them. You are looking to see if she is the author of her own story, learning from each chapter to write a better next one, or if she is trapped rereading the same painful passages, casting herself as a perpetual victim of her own history. Begin by exploring her family background with gentle curiosity, understanding that this is the original blueprint for how she understands love, conflict, and commitment. The goal isn't to find a picture-perfect upbringing. Such a thing doesn't exist, but to understand the values that were modeled for her and how she has chosen to integrate or reject them as an adult. When she speaks about her parents or guardians, listen less for the facts of what happened and more for the meaning she has assigned to it. Does she describe her family with a sense of appreciation for their efforts, even while acknowledging their flaws? This demonstrates an ability to hold nuanced, compassionate perspectives. Or is her narrative dominated by blame and bitterness, suggesting she may still be waiting for an apology or a change that will never come, effectively giving her family control over her present emotional state? A Stoic-minded individual takes ownership of her adult life. She can acknowledge that her parents did the best they could with the tools they had, and she now focuses on the tools she is choosing for herself, breaking any cycles she deems harmful rather than complaining about them. This leads directly into a discussion of her past romantic relationships, which must be approached not as an inquisition, but as a joint exploration of patterns and growth. The most critical question you are listening to answer is, does she demonstrate accountability and self-awareness? When she discusses why a past relationship ended, does she take responsibility for her part in the dynamic, however small? you might hear her say, "My last relationship failed because of poor communication, and I've since realized I need to be more vocal about my needs instead of expecting my partner to read my mind." This shows a person who uses the past as a tutor. In stark contrast, if every story of a failed relationship is a tale of her being wronged by a parade of crazy, selfish, or unavailable partners, consider it a significant warning. While she may have encountered difficult people, a pattern of casting herself solely as the blameless victim indicates a lack of self-reflection. It suggests she is likely to repeat the same dynamics, and in your relationship, you will eventually be assigned the role of the next villain in her story. The ultimate purpose of this filter is to assess her capacity for integration and change. Has she done the work to understand her attachment style, her triggers, and the unconscious patterns she might bring into a new partnership? This work is the practical application of the Stoic command to know thyself. A woman who is serious about building a healthy relationship will be able to articulate her own growth. She might share, "I used to be very avoidant during conflict because that's what I saw growing up, but I've been practicing staying present and talking things through even when it's uncomfortable." This tells you she is an active participant in her own evolution. She isn't expecting a new partner to fix her or magically avoid all the issues of her past. She is entering the relationship as a more conscious and skilled individual. She views her history not as a life sentence predicting her future, but as a series of experiments from which she has gathered crucial data on what does and does not work for her. Applying this filter allows you to see the woman standing before you not just as she is today, but as the sum of her learned experiences and her conscious choices. You are looking for evidence that she has the wisdom to honor her past without being enslaved by it, using its lessons to build a more virtuous and self-aware present. A partner like this brings a profound sense of security to a relationship. You know that when challenges arise, as they inevitably will, she won't simply react from old, unhealed wounds. She will respond from a place of hard-won wisdom, ready to co-create a new, healthier pattern with you, making your partnership a testament to growth rather than a repetition of history. While the Stoics were deeply rational and grounded in the observable world, their philosophy was never meant to be a cold, sterile exercise in logic. At its core, it acknowledges a profound connection to something greater than the individual self, a concept they called the Logos. This wasn't a personal god in the traditional sense, but rather a rational, ordering principle that permeates the entire universe, a kind of cosmic intelligence that connects all things. To live in accordance with nature, the highest Stoic good, meant to live in harmony with this Logos, to understand your small but purposeful place within a vast, interconnected whole. This 21st filter moves beyond the practical and into the profound, asking you to explore whether a woman has cultivated her own sense of spiritual or philosophical depth, a personal framework that provides her with meaning, perspective, and a resilient buffer against the existential anxieties of life. You're not looking for her to recite Marcus Aurelius or to adhere to a specific dogma. You are assessing whether she has done the essential work of grappling with life's biggest questions, arriving at her own set of guiding principles that provide ballast when the seas get rough. A person without this depth often finds themselves emotionally shipwrecked by major life events, a significant loss, a career failure, a personal crisis, because their sense of meaning is brittle, tied entirely to external conditions that can change in an instant. In contrast, a woman with a developed philosophical framework possesses an inner citadel. She has a foundational understanding of what she believes about suffering, purpose, and her place in the world, which allows her to endure hardship without collapsing into despair or nihilism. You can begin to explore this depth through open-ended conversations that gently touch on these larger themes. Instead of asking directly about her spirituality, which can feel loaded or abstract, ask about what sustains her. Pose questions like, what sources do you turn to for strength when things are really difficult? Or what do you feel is your purpose in your work or in your life in general? Listen not for a perfectly polished answer, but for the presence of any answer at all. Does she have a ready, thoughtful response that points to internally generated values like leaving a positive impact, pursuing truth, cultivating love, or contributing to her community? Or does she seem caught off guard, fumbling for a response, or defaulting to superficial answers like to be happy or to be successful, without any deeper exploration of what those words truly mean to her? Pay close attention to how she discusses nature, art, history, or human suffering. These topics often act as portals to a person's deeper worldview. Does she express a sense of awe or wonder when looking at the night sky or standing in an ancient forest, acknowledging a reality far grander than her own daily concerns? When discussing a profound piece of music, literature, or film, does she engage with its themes on a level that goes beyond simple entertainment, exploring what it says about the human condition? Her reaction to the suffering of others is particularly telling. Does she respond with a judgmental, "How could that happen?" which can imply an expectation of a fair and predictable universe, or with a more stoic informed, "This is a tragic part of life, how can we help?" which acknowledges the inherent unpredictability of existence while affirming our duty to respond with compassion. This shift in perspective reveals a mind that has reconciled itself to the harder truths of life. Ultimately, applying this filter helps you find a partner who is not just emotionally mature but soulfully resilient. She understands that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived with all its beauty and its brutality. She doesn't need you to be the sole source of her meaning or to protect her from existential fears. She arrives with her own sense of purpose already intact. This doesn't make her detached or unfeeling. In fact, it allows her to love more freely and deeply because she is choosing you from a place of abundance, not need. She is a fellow traveler who understands the journey is long and often difficult, but who walks with her own light, making her a truly steady and inspiring companion for the road ahead. The way a person chooses to unwind and recharge is a window into their soul, far more revealing than any curated dating profile or carefully scripted first date conversation. This brings us to our 20-second Stoic filter, one that examines the crucial balance between earnest effort and essential enjoyment, recreational and leisure compatibility. The Stoics were not joyless workaholics. They were profound advocates for the thoughtful use of all our time, including our hours of rest. They believed leisure was not a void to be filled with mindless distraction, but a vital space for recharging the spirit, cultivating the mind, and deepening connections. Evaluating a woman's approach to her free time isn't about judging her hobbies. It's about assessing whether her chosen forms of relaxation contribute to her strength of character and align with a life of purposeful engagement, or whether they serve as an escape from it, leaving her more drained and fragmented than before. To apply this filter, first observe the quality of her leisure pursuits. The Stoic ideal leans toward activities that are active, creative, or enriching practices that restore energy rather than merely consuming it. This doesn't mean every moment must be a productive hustle. It's about the difference between passive consumption and active engagement. Does she spend her weekends binge-watching an entire series in a single sitting, emerging bleary-eyed and disconnected from the world? Or does she use a film as a starting point for a thoughtful conversation, a spark for her own imagination? You might notice she gravitates toward hobbies that have a tangible output or involve skill development: gardening, learning an instrument, woodworking, hiking, painting, or even mastering the art of cooking a complex meal. These activities share a common thread. They require presence, focus, and a degree of effort that is itself rewarding. They are katastematic pleasures, those that come from the state of doing and being rather than fleeting kinetic pleasures that vanish the moment the stimulus is gone. A woman whose leisure is built around these enriching pursuits is building a resilient and interesting self, someone who brings a sense of vitality and curiosity into a relationship rather than just a need to be entertained. This directly ties into the concept of balance, a cornerstone of the Stoic virtue of temperance. A healthy leisure life isn't monolithic. It includes a spectrum of activities, from the cerebral to the purely social to the physically challenging. The key is that she is intentional about this balance, not simply defaulting to the easiest available option. You might discover that her week includes time for reading to expand her mind, meeting friends for meaningful connection, sweating in the gym to care for her body, and yes, occasionally zoning out with a fun video game or a silly reality show. But that last activity is a conscious choice for brief relaxation, not the default setting for her existence. This intentionality shows she is the author of her own life, consciously allocating her most finite resource time toward activities that nourish different parts of her being. In contrast, a pattern of leisure that consists solely of passive, numbing consumption can be a red flag for avoidance, suggesting she may be using these activities to escape from unresolved stress, anxiety, or a lack of fulfillment in other areas of her life, which will inevitably become a source of strain in a partnership. Ultimately, applying this filter helps you gauge your fundamental compatibility in building a shared life beyond work and obligation. Your leisure time together will form the bedrock of your connection, the source of your shared memories and inside jokes. If your ideas of a good time are worlds apart, it can create a subtle but persistent undercurrent of frustration. If she finds her ultimate joy in loud, crowded parties and your perfect weekend involves quiet mornings with books and long walks, you will constantly be negotiating how to spend your time together, with one person often feeling they are sacrificing their preferred form of restoration. Finding a partner whose recreational values align with yours doesn't mean you must share every single hobby. It means you share a similar philosophy about leisure. You both understand it as sacred time for genuine recreation of the self. When this alignment exists, your time together becomes a synergistic source of joy and growth, whether you're exploring a new trail, trying a DIY project, learning a new skill side by side, or simply enjoying the deep, comfortable silence of two people completely at ease, recharging in each other's presence without the need for any external stimulus at all. Life rarely unfolds according to our carefully laid plans, and it is precisely in these moments of disruption that a person's deepest character is revealed. This brings us to our 23rd filter, a profoundly practical one that examines how a person navigates the inevitable storms, the crisis response preparedness. Stoicism is at its heart a philosophy of preparedness. It doesn't just help us endure hardship, it provides a framework for mentally and emotionally rehearsing for it, so when a real crisis strikes, we are not hijacked by panic but can respond with clarity and virtue. This filter asks you to look beyond a woman's sunny day demeanor and assess her inner resilience by understanding how she has handled past difficulties and how she mentally prepares for future ones. You're essentially stress testing her character to see if she possesses the fortitude to be a true partner when everything goes wrong, not just when everything is right. The Stoic method for this is the ancient practice of premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. This isn't about pessimistic worrying, it's a courageous and strategic form of mental inoculation. By calmly envisioning potential setbacks, from a flat tire to a job loss to a health scare, we rob them of their power to shock us. We walk through the scenario in our minds, not to dwell on the fear, but to calmly plan our response. We ask ourselves, if this happened, what virtues would I need to call upon? What would be the first rational step? What is within my control here? This practice builds a kind of psychic muscle memory, so a real crisis feels familiar, almost like a drill we've already run. A woman who is prepared in this Stoic sense won't be easily overwhelmed because she has already met this challenge in her mind and developed a plan of action. To apply this filter, you need to become a thoughtful listener of her life stories, paying special attention to the narratives around past crises. When she shares a story about a major difficulty, a family illness, a financial setback, a professional failure, listen for the posture she took within the story. Was she the primary agent, making difficult decisions and taking control of the things she could influence? Or was she a passive victim, buffeted by events and waiting for someone else to provide a solution? You're not listening for the absence of emotion. Grief, fear, and stress are human and valid. You're listening for what she did with those emotions. Did they paralyze her, or did she feel them fully and then, crucially, take the next necessary step? A resilient response might sound like, "When my dad got sick, it was terrifying, but I researched treatment options, organized a schedule for his care with my siblings, and made sure to also take time for my own mental health so I could be strong for him." This shows a capacity to hold emotion in one hand and effective action in the other. You can also gauge this through smaller, real-time observations. How does she handle a sudden, unexpected problem when you're together? If your car breaks down on a trip, does she immediately descend into complaints about the ruined day? Or does she start problem solving, looking up tow trucks, calling the rental company, suggesting ways to pass the time productively while you wait? These micro-crises are miniature litmus tests for her larger crisis response. A woman with Stoic preparedness meets the problem where it is. She accepts the new, inconvenient reality instantly and without wasteful emotional drama, and then immediately directs her energy toward the sphere of her control. Her first question is always, "Okay, this happened. What's the next right move?" Ultimately, applying this filter helps you determine if you are choosing a co-captain for your life ship or a passenger who only enjoys smooth sailing. A prepared, resilient partner doesn't add to the chaos of a crisis. She becomes a source of calm and competence within it. She understands that hardship is not an interruption of life but a part of it, and she has done the inner work to ensure she can meet it with courage, wisdom, and a steady hand. Building a life with someone like this means you never have to face adversity alone. You have a teammate who is already mentally and emotionally equipped to help you navigate any storm, turning shared challenges into opportunities to demonstrate the strength of your partnership. Perhaps the most tangible and immediate way to observe a person's true values is not by listening to what they say, but by watching where they consistently place their attention and energy. This brings us to our 24th Stoic filter, a profoundly practical one that cuts through all pretense: the life priorities and time allocation audit. The Stoics were unequivocal in their view of time. Seneca, in his famous letters, wrote that we are frugal with our money and our property, but we are reckless with our time, the one resource we can never replenish. He argued that we act as if we will live forever, constantly postponing our life instead of recognizing that each day is a non-renewable gift to be invested wisely. When evaluating a potential partner, you are essentially auditing her most precious currency. You're looking to see if her daily investments reflect a deep understanding that time is life itself, and if she spends it on things that truly matter, cultivating virtue, deepening relationships, and contributing to something larger than herself, or if she fritters it away on the trivial and the transient. To apply this filter, you must move beyond abstract conversations about values and into the concrete reality of her weekly schedule. Our calendars are the truest ledgers of our priorities, far more honest than our words. Begin with simple, observant curiosity. How does she structure her days? Does she move with a sense of intention, allocating time for the things she claims are important? If she says she values her health, does her calendar reflect regular time for movement and preparing nutritious food? If she claims personal growth is a priority, is there dedicated time for reading, learning, or practicing a skill? A woman whose time allocation aligns with her stated values understands that a value without dedicated time is merely a wish. She knows that a life of meaning isn't built in grand, sweeping gestures, but in the quiet, consistent daily deposits of time into the activities that shape her character and her world. This stands in stark contrast to a life dominated by what the Stoics would have called distractions, activities that consume time without offering any real nourishment or return. In the modern world, this most often manifests as a relationship with digital entertainment and social media. This isn't about never relaxing, it's about the proportion and the purpose. Does she lose hours each day to endless, aimless scrolling, emerging feeling more anxious and fragmented than when she started? Or does she use technology as a deliberate tool for connection and learning, setting clear boundaries to prevent it from hijacking her attention? A Stoic-minded individual is the master of her technology, not its servant. She understands that these platforms are designed to capture and commodify her attention, and she guards that attention fiercely because she knows it is the raw material of her life. She would no more give her hours away to meaningless digital consumption than she would hand her wallet to a stranger. The most critical aspect of this audit involves assessing her hierarchy of importance, especially when it comes to relationships. For the Stoics, our duty to our fellow humans was paramount. Does her schedule reflect that people are a priority? When a friend is in crisis, does she clear space to be present for them, even if it's inconvenient? Does she protect time for deep, uninterrupted connection with the people she loves, putting her phone away and offering her full attention? Or are her relationships constantly squeezed between other commitments, relegated to the leftover scraps of her energy? You can often see this in how she handles plans. Does she honor her commitments to others, or does she frequently cancel or reschedule when something better or more work-related comes up? A woman who values relationships understands that time is the ultimate expression of love. Giving someone your time is giving them a literal piece of your life. Her calendar reflects this sacred exchange. Ultimately, applying this filter helps you find a partner who is not just interesting but deep. Her life is not a collection of reactions to external stimuli. It is a carefully curated project built on intentional choices. She isn't waiting for her real life to begin someday when conditions are perfect. She is architecting a meaningful life today, one well-spent hour at a time. Building a future with someone like this means you are joining your life to someone who understands the profound weight and value of every moment. You will never have to compete with trivialities for her attention because she has already mastered the art of prioritizing what truly matters. Her time, and by extension, the life you build together, will be invested, not spent, creating a shared existence of rich connection and purposeful growth, a living testament to the Stoic belief that a long life is not measured by the number of breaths we take, but by the number of moments that take our breath away with their depth and meaning. The final and perhaps most beautiful filter in the Stoic framework brings our focus full circle, from the individual to the shared space between two people. This is the mutual growth potential evaluation, and it asks perhaps the most important question of all. Does being with this woman actively make you a better, more virtuous version of yourself? The Stoics viewed the highest form of relationship not as a mere source of companionship or pleasure, but as a sacred partnership for the mutual pursuit of wisdom and character. A partner, in the truest sense, is a fellow traveler on the path toward a life lived in accordance with nature. She is not just someone you enjoy, she is someone who, by her very presence, her character, and her engagement with you, calls you to your highest self. This filter moves beyond assessing her qualities in isolation to examine the dynamic, living thing you create together, the synergistic effect of your union. To apply this filter, you must turn your gaze inward with radical honesty and observe the changes in your own character since this person entered your life. This requires a level of self-awareness that the Stoics called prosoch, or mindful attention. Before you met her, perhaps you struggled with patience, were easily irritated by small inconveniences, or tended to retreat into your shell under stress. Now observe yourself. Do you find that you're more patient, not because you're trying to impress her, but because her calm demeanor in the face of chaos is subtly teaching your nervous system a new way to be? Has your courage grown because you see her facing her fears with such integrity that it inspires you to do the same? A relationship with high mutual growth potential acts as a gentle, constant mirror and a catalyst. She doesn't nag you to change. Her mere existence as a virtuous person creates an environment where your own better nature is drawn out and encouraged to flourish. This dynamic works both ways, of course, and that's where the true partnership lies. The question isn't just, does she make me better, but do we make each other better? You should be able to observe your positive influence on her life with the same clarity. Does she mention that your logical approach to problems has helped her see things more clearly? Has your discipline in your own life inspired her to pursue a goal she'd been putting off? This reciprocal elevation is the engine of a Stoic relationship. Your conversations should frequently elevate from the mundane to the meaningful, becoming opportunities to sharpen each other's thinking. You challenge each other's assumptions not to win an argument but in a shared pursuit of truth. You become one another's most trusted advisor and most encouraging supporter, a living, breathing practice ground for all the Stoic virtues. You are, in effect, symbiotes for virtue, each providing the conditions for the other to grow stronger and wiser. The ultimate sign of this mutual growth potential is found in how you handle each other's flaws and setbacks. In a shallow relationship, a partner's weakness might be met with criticism, disappointment, or even secret satisfaction. In a true Stoic partnership, a flaw or a failure is met with compassionate curiosity and a commitment to help each other overcome it. If you notice a recurring pattern of jealousy in her reactions, you don't use it as ammunition in a future fight. You help her explore the underlying insecurity with kindness, perhaps pointing her toward a Stoic concept that could help, like the dichotomy of control. When you fail to live up to your own standards and act with arrogance or impatience, she doesn't shame you. She gently reminds you of the person you are striving to be, holding up the mirror of your highest self without judgment. You become sacred guardians of each other's potential, always seeing the rational, virtuous being within the other, even when they temporarily forget it themselves. This creates a relationship that isn't just pleasant or comfortable. It is actively transformative, a daily workshop where two people, committed to the same philosophical journey, help each other build lives of unshakable character and profound meaning. Taken together, these 25 filters are far more than a simple checklist. They form a complete and interlocking operating system for discernment in your romantic life. Each filter, from assessing virtue alignment to scrutinizing time allocation, acts as a single lens, but when you look through all of them together, they bring the entire picture of a person's character and compatibility into a stunning, undeniable clarity. This isn't about finding a perfect human being. Such a person doesn't exist. It's about systematically identifying someone whose flaws are not deal-breaking breaches of character, but rather human imperfections that you can navigate together with wisdom and grace. This system transforms the chaotic and often confusing process of dating from a game of chance into a practice of mindful selection, where you are no longer a passive participant hoping to be chosen, but an active architect carefully choosing who deserves a role in your life story. By internalizing and applying these Stoic principles, you accomplish the most valuable saving of all, the conservation of your most precious non-renewable resources, your time and your emotional energy. Every moment you do not spend on a connection that was never going to flourish is a moment you get to reinvest in yourself, your passions, and your peace of mind. You stop pouring your finite attention into emotional sinkholes, relationships that drain you with drama, inconsistency, and fundamental misalignment. Instead, you become a guardian of your own serenity, understanding that a peaceful life alone is infinitely more valuable than a turbulent life with the wrong partner. This process saves you from the slow erosion of self-esteem that comes from trying to force a square peg into a round hole, and the profound heartache of realizing months or years have been spent on a path leading nowhere. The ultimate goal of this entire framework is to cultivate a profound sense of self-trust. When you make these Stoic filters your own, you develop an internal compass that is calibrated to true north, your core values. You will no longer need to crowdsource opinions on your relationships or agonize for weeks over whether someone is right for you. The signs will be clear, the data will be consistent, and your decision will flow from a place of calm conviction, not anxious confusion. This self-trust allows you to move through the world of dating with a new kind of confidence, not arrogance, rooted in the knowledge that you have the tools to accurately assess character and protect your own well-being. It is crucial to remember that wielding this system is not an invitation to become overly critical, rigid, or closed off to the beautiful vulnerability that real connection requires. The filters are a tool for discernment, not a weapon for finding fault with every human you meet. The Stoic heart remains open, but it is now protected by a disciplined mind. You are not building walls to keep people out. You are installing a sophisticated security system that allows the right ones to enter freely while alerting you to potential threats. Your openness is now a conscious choice, not a naive default setting. You can still be surprised by joy, captivated by chemistry, and moved by vulnerability, but you now do so with the wisdom to see if those wonderful feelings are built on a foundation of substance and shared values. So I encourage you to take these 25 filters and make them your own. Start by reflecting on which ones resonate most deeply with you right now. Perhaps you need to focus on the Locus of Control Assessment to stop attracting projects instead of partners, or maybe the Gratitude and Contentment filter to break your own cycle of seeking external validation. Keep these principles in mind not as a rigid test to administer on a first date, but as a lens through which to observe and reflect over time. Be patient with yourself as you learn to see the world through this new, clearer perspective. And when you do meet someone who consistently aligns with this Stoic framework, whose actions echo virtue, whose mind seeks growth, and whose spirit operates from a place of abundance, you will recognize them not with the frantic excitement of hope, but with the deep, calm certainty of knowing. You will be ready, not because you are desperate to be completed, but because you are already whole, and you are choosing to share your completeness with someone who is truly worthy.